In the election of 1932, Roosevelt promised the American people an allegiance to a New Deal that would provide them with relief, recovery, and reform. Americans in the North, the South, the West, in urban regions and in rural regions, were all resolving to place their hopes in Roosevelt's hands. This resulted from Americans' waning endurance in hard times in what became known as the Great Depression. Furthermore, the New Deal was a response to the Great Depression, but to understand the solutions offered by the New Deal in response to the Great Depression, we must also look at a few contributing factors of the Great Depression that arose back in the 1920s. In order to best describe the New Deal movement and its connection to the 1920s, I will introduce the unifying theme of the New Deal, which was thought to be lacking in the 1920s: stability. During the 1920s, prosperity was abundant, and business and government went hand in hand. But the scope of government reform at the federal level was decreasing because opposition argued against growing government involvement in the economy. This opposition grew out of the fear that government had grown dangerously big under the influence of progressivists and was beginning to endanger the freedom of the American people by enforcing morals. However, the prosperity of the 1920s and the shift of power to industry and business became the downfall of the time's well-being and led to the Great Depression. From this resulted the importance of stability being the focus of the New Deal movement, because Roosevelt sought to provide direct relief, recovery, and reform as solutions to the hard times yielded by the Great Depression. And, in conclusion, the programs and policies ideally would establish stabilizers that would be able to prevent the harsh cycles of booms and busts that led to depressions. Roosevelt's New Deal is known for its efforts to provide relief, recovery, and reform, especially in trying to do so in a quick manner. Although the New Deal did not fully recover the economy or fully provide relief to those in need, it did, critically, provide stability under programs and policies such that hard times in the future would be less severe. Roosevelt promised that he would help the forgotten man, but this New Deal did very little to actually help him. Here, the forgotten man represents the farmers who were ever suffering from hard economic times. To combat their low economic status, the AAA and Farm Credit Administration were both programs created to help them out, but the policies that were beneficial mostly benefited the landowning farmers, and not the tenant farmers and sharecroppers, the ones in real need of relief. However, by paying farmers to produce less, the government was setting up a stabilizer because less production of crops would enable farmers to set higher prices and make the agriculture business more profitable. And this practice actually continues today. Other ways in which the New Deal attempted to provide relief and recovery was through the creation of jobs through programs such as the CCC or TVA and WPA. Programs such as the CCC or Civilian Conservation Corps were designed to provide jobs to young men and provide relief through work in order to maintain a man's morale. Infrastructure grew during this time as a result of these jobs, and government involvement grew at the expense of industrial growth because many industries sought to make money that the government was taking away by, for example, building dams and generating electricity. Another important stabilizer designed to produce relief was the Social Security Act, which would provide assistance to the people eligible for retirement based on age, the unemployed, and those with disabilities. This program was the introduction of the nation's direction into providing social welfare and attending groups that were previously ignored. Along with Roosevelt's priority of providing solutions, His wife would suggest to him as well to hire more minorities and women, which further showed how the president's New Deal was addressing groups that were previously ignored, even though he could not help African Americans the way that he wanted to, such as by supporting an anti-lynching bill, due to the importance of securing votes in Congress to pass legislation for the greater good. Back in the 1920s, women's rights, equal rights, and government involvement in the economy were still opposed by many, despite the prosperity. The use of advertisement had expanded business, and propaganda had led to exceedingly large investments into businesses. However, panic had spread when investors realized that they may have been placing too much money in certain industries and started speculating their real worth. In what resulted in a crash, investors started to pull away their money and triggered the failure of the economy and banks. Without the stabilizers that the New Deal would focus on, the American people were hurt badly and lost confidence in banks and business. These are the problems addressed by the New Deal, as Roosevelt tried to provide relief and reform, as he asked Americans to take their money back to the banks in order to restore their confidence, and help business by setting stabilizers through coalitions of business so that they could decide on standards such as product prices, all while allowing for workers to form unions so that their freedom would not be infringed. This concludes my discussion on the New Deal. I hope you will consider stability as the overall theme of the New Deal movement and realize its importance in regards as it changed from the 1920s. Thank you and have a great day.